With nearly 1,000 wineries in the Willamette Valley, it takes a lot to stand out. But Dobbes Winery and Wine by Joe managed to do just that. Not only do they create great wine, these sister companies have generosity woven into everything they do, supporting numerous nonprofits both locally and on a national scale. In this episode, I'm joined by Director of Sales, Michelle Bolliger, as we talk about Dobbes Family Winery and Wine by Joe. We'll be discussing how these companies got started, why and how generosity is at the core of everything they do, how they choose their giving partners, and how to give in a way that really makes a difference. Hi, I'm Daniel Roberts, host of the Giving Town podcast, where we share stories about the people and organizations that make Newberg so great. This podcast is brought to you by my real estate team, the Joyful Roberts Group, where we help your family make the right move. We love serving this town and our amazing clients. We'd be happy to help you with buying or selling a home anywhere around the Newberg area. If you're interested, you can learn more about us at thejoyfulrobertsgroup.com. Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Michelle, thanks for joining me today on the Giving Town podcast. I'm looking forward to learning a bit more about Dobbes Winery and Wine by Joe, and more importantly, well, maybe not more importantly to you, but to our audience, about what you guys do in the community. So to preface, we met at a greeters event back, I think it was in September.
Yeah.
And from there, and I'd been to Dobbes a couple times, but from there learned that there's a lot of things you guys do behind the scenes that you don't necessarily advertise. And it was just a really cool story how a winery right here in, Dundee in our backyard is doing all of these amazing things. So I'm looking forward to sharing that, a little bit of that story with our audience today, our listeners, however many people happen to be on today, and getting that story out. So most people who drive on 99, they see Dobbes Winery all the time. So they see, oh yeah, there's a winery behind the train tracks. But they probably don't know the full story unless they actually know you guys or our members have been directly involved. So can you share a little bit about the story about Dobbes, Wine by Joe, what that connection is and how you guys got started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been with the company for 16 years. We were actually founded by Joe Dobbes in 2002. So he wanted to start his own winery, and so he started Dobbes Family Estate in 2002, and then the following year created the brand Wine by Joe. So they're one and the same. They're sisters. But like you said, our tasting room is in Dundee. I'm born and raised in Newberg, so been here my whole life. I won't say how old, but
at least 16 years.
Yes, at least. But I think the great thing, I loved how our conversation came organically at the chamber meeting that day. And, when Joe started the company, the foundation of our company back then was giving back. He unfortunately lost 2 siblings to suicide. And so he immediately started giving to the American Suicide Prevention Fund. Since then, it's just grown. And I think that's been the most special thing is every year in our tasting room, we give away to 4 different charities. Those are chosen by our employees. So, for instance, I got to choose 1 year ago because I have 2 family members with brain tumors. So I went to that society. We have employees that have given back to school funds, or so kids can have what they need for school, or to forestry. Like, it just goes on and on. But it's really awesome to have our employees be able to tell their stories. So with that, we'll send out emails. We have frames in the tasting room with our employee and talking about why this charity or nonprofit is near and dear to their heart. So I think that's been really special that it's gone on now 23 years. We've given back to hundreds of organizations in this time.
Wow. And quick, just for my brain. So Joe started Dobbes Family Estates, is that the name of it, right? And then Wine by Joe. Why did he start sister companies?
So, Dobbes Family Estate, it's more that boutique, quintessential wine country brand. So that one you're going to find mainly in our tasting room, where Wine by Joe is made to be like that everyday drinker. That your porch wine, sunshine or rainy days, that is Wine by Joe. When that brand is more so in grocery stores.
Okay.
So what's been really special for my career in the last few years is taking, all this giving back that we've been doing through the tasting room, but bringing that to more of a national scale.
Okay.
So we have been partnering for the last 3 years with the Oregon Zoo, and we just launched a partnership with the National Marine Sanctuary in Florida. It's morphing. It's taking on this national landscape, and finding out with these larger organizations, kind of what speaks to them at their level and their regional level, and how we can go in and support that.
Yeah. So, and just so to clarify, so Wine by Joe is much bigger than in terms of scale,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
So like how many cases are we looking at as far as like?
So Wine by Joe, it's about 70,000 cases, whereas Dobbes about 10,000 cases. Okay. So Wine by Joe is, for all intents and purposes, more of a grocery store brand.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that helps me just I need like shelves on my brain to like put information, like how do I, think about this? So when you go into Dobbes, you're going to be having the Dobbes wine, and then there's just the same. And is Wine by Joe across the street? Am I thinking of that?
Yes,
right?
that's where our production facility is. Yeah, but no tasting room there.
Okay. So the giving back part, I mean, you have a very personal story, and so did Joe about giving. And part of why, most of the time people think of this podcast as interviewing nonprofits. And we were just kind of briefly talking about, before we started, there's often this mindset that there's either a nonprofit who's doing good in the community, or there's businesses who are just kind of focused on themselves. And I have interviewed, I guess, several other organizations, but I really like information or stories that can help kind of the everyday person in Newberg or business owner really begin to see themselves as like, oh, I don't need to start a nonprofit. I don't need to, it doesn't need to be this big grand thing. Like I can make a difference in what I do. I mean, obviously, like everyone wants to serve their customer well, make a great product or offer a great service and take care of people in that way. But I think there's something really rewarding about beginning to take a step farther and actually find ways to give back in the community and, find ways to actually build up the entire community beyond just providing a really good service in what you do. So one of the things I was curious about is, for you guys, there's a difference between writing a check, like, you can make an automatic contribution to a nonprofit and just kind of forget about, or maybe it's something that you can put on social media. And I think there's a difference between having that and kind of a core motivation of like, this is what we're about. Like, like I think a lot of companies, there wouldn't be any noticeable difference within the company if they stopped giving. Whereas with you guys, it's so ingrained into what you do, especially with your employees doing volunteering and giving, and we'll get to some of that. But if you all of a sudden like stop, just like, well, now the whole company's changed. There isn't really the Dobbes and Wine by Joe culture without the giving, if that makes sense. So I guess my question would be, what makes that? I mean, obviously it started with the decision by Joe all those years ago, but what do you think makes that difference within a company? And if my question doesn't make sense, does that make sense? What the question is? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it absolutely makes sense. And I think it goes back to us having a bigger message. It's not me selling wine. It's me selling something that somebody might not know about, or something that they can influence, or something that they can be a part of. Especially with, for instance, the Oregon Zoo Foundation, when I can go to an account, whether that be a restaurant or a hotel, I'm not talking about the wine. I'm talking about the conservation that they're doing for the sea otters or the elephants or the rhinos, things that people don't realize that they're doing. And, at the winery, like we at least have 5 dogs on property at all times. Like we're huge animal lovers, but and I think, when your heart bleeds that, like, it's knowledge and everybody wants to learn. And so just by realizing more so that, these partnerships and these supporting that we're doing has such a bigger message and pull. Like, I mentioned in Florida with the sanctuary, like I'm talking about their marine life. And, when I'm going in and figuring out, where we want to support, it's kind of what is in our ethos, what's in our foundation that Joe said that like speaks to us as a company, but also like what speaks to that community. And, Oregon Zoo is huge here and they have a worldwide reach, which I think a lot of people don't realize. Or in Florida, the waters, like they need the waters and the, healthiness of the waters. But it goes to each community. And the thing I've found that's really fascinating with going into these different markets, I love to just sit at a bar and talk to a local and talk to them. And so every time I'm going into market and traveling for work, I'm always asking like, what speaks to you in your community? And I've learned so much. So that's kind of like it's great. It's been neat that it's evolved. We even have a distributor in Connecticut that, our staff, you mentioned volunteers. We have, instead of PTO, we have BTO days. So volunteer days, we have mandatory volunteer days. So, on Martin Luther King Day, we were at one of the parks in Sherwood with, Friends of Trees and planting trees and shrubs. But we have a distributor that sees what we're doing as a staff in giving back. And in our honor of our company, they're going to do a day of volunteering. So it's been awesome to see just us talking about what we're doing. It's making the wheels turn in these other companies and it's evolving more than I thought it would. It's so exciting, but it's just like, oh, this is great. Like, it's so heart fulfilling for me to like see this change. It's been great.
What did you expect it to be? How's it been? Like, what did you expect it to be and how is it specifically different than what you thought?
It's taking on more than I thought it would. Like realizing that everyone they do want to give back, but I think they have a hard time. Like, how do you do that? And it's not just like, I know everyone is so super busy and, but if it's like, if I can have, something in a hotel room in Florida and a traveler comes in and they get to learn about, where the waters are getting warmer and it's killing off the coral. But by doing that from a gateway through our wine, maybe it's on a menu and saying, you're having this bottle, we are supporting your community by giving proceeds back and we are helping support the local waterways here with the animals. Like I think that's been the best piece of we're an avenue of all these people. We have a lot of tourism coming in here too. And so I love when somebody can go to the store and see a partnership we have, and maybe they do go to the Oregon Zoo and want to go learn more. It just piques their interest. It's been, so that's the reach is going farther than I thought it would be.
Yeah. Do you guys, have local organizations that you give to, like here with like the Newberg Dundee area? Oh
yeah. I can give you a whole list. Like I said, there's hundreds of them, but from a huge one is, our local food banks. Avoy is another one who helps, just getting people through like vineyard, schooling and things like that.
What was the name of that one?
Avoy.
I haven't heard of that one.
Just this last week, we had a team go up to Portland and it's called Pair, but it's helping, homeless youth. And so they packed lunches for them and just an amazing program. The other thing that with like that organization came and spoke at our all staff meeting. So whoever chooses the organization for the quarter, through the tasting room, we have that organization come and speak to our staff for 30 minutes and teach us about what they do and how we can, go and volunteer there and support that they need and for the community. So I think that it's like knowledge is power. That's been amazing to hear all these organizations come and speak to us too and how we can do more.
Yeah. The reason I ask is because you grew up here in the area, and you mentioned how when you go to places, you'll ask the questions of like, hey, what matters to you? Do you engage in some of those same conversations here and see like, okay, for other people in Newberg, like what do you guys feel? And I guess I'm sure you have, but I'm curious, like what do you gather like as a whole? Like what are some of the common threads you see?
Common threads here and is definitely outdoorsy. So when, one of the things with that too, like we've given back, we had all the fires in the gorge. So, between our waterways too, I think that's definitely that, that Pacific Northwest vibe. Also too, that's kind of along the same lines with the animals in the zoo and how, that came to fruition too. But I think that's been, even when I've been up in Seattle too, it's the waters, it's the trees. So that's kind of, but it's changed. Like there's some areas that I've gone to when I'm like, I've gone to Midwest and I'm like, it's a bit of a melting pot. And I'm like, I don't know what we could what speaks to the ethos of some of the communities that I have gone to. So that's why it's, with these partnerships, especially on the grander national scale, like it does take probably 2 years for those to come to fruition. The Florida one I've been working on for the last 2 years.
Do you have any stories of like organizations that you've partnered with and like getting stories back of like how that actually made an impact? Like it's one thing to write a check, but then when you realize like, oh, well, that's like this actually allowed like this difference to be made. Like, do you have any stories like that?
I think a lot of those, the local ones and, the ongoing support of, like you said, it's not just writing a check. It's where we, have gone in and, see the trees that we planted as a team years ago, or, ivy we cleaned out, or the communities we helped with. Also here locally, we were part of the Bolby toy drive, like just giving back. We had our CEO was best friend, and so his family came and got a lot of toys donated for the holidays. But there's so many bits and pieces that I think for all of our staff means different things. Like every year we go out and we have, for the last 5 years, from Rogers Landing in Newberg to Shampooey Park, that is our section. So we partner with Solve and we clean up, that section of the river every year, multiple times a year. So it's all different things that.
I didn't realize you guys helped with Rogers Landing. We, this is kind of a tangent, but, 2023, I think August, it must have been 2023. We had a thing with the Rotary clubs, the Kiwanis Club and Sir Optimus, and we all went down and did a bunch of cleanup down there at the basically the little beach. It's not much of a beach, but the beach area at Rogers Landing. And, we had to work with the parks, to do that. But you guys go down there and do cleanup.
So on kayaks and boats. So we have, so Solve is outside. I believe they're located in Portland. But yeah, so they go out and you can divide up sections of the waterways. So we have that.
Okay. So you're cleaning up the actual waterway area. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That place needs some love for sure.
It does need love. It's beautiful.
It floods. It's like right now it's in like major flood stage with all the rain we've been getting. And so I've thought many times, like, there's gotta be a way to make it like some effective way so that it doesn't look so terrible in the summer, because like you can put in all this nice stuff, but it'll just get washed away. So anyway, that's a conversation for another time with other groups. But,
I just think it's been neat. I mean, just like those, we're always still learning, and it's just companies like, oh, have you talked to this person or learn from this person? There is, this last summer, a group of us went down to Salem, and there's a, local nonprofit farm, and we went and planted vegetables, and they feed the community. So we went out for half a day, but it's just like, it's been fascinating. I'm learning so much more about like what we do have in our own backyard of what people are doing and giving back. It's amazing how much it could be a full-time job with all of it too, supporting.
Well, I have actually a question about that, which I'll get to, but first I was curious, how do you feel like the giving or the generosity of the company has affected the culture at the company, like among the employees and leadership?
I think it's huge. It gives everyone buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, buy-in's a good word, but
engagement was the word I was thinking of.
Yeah. It's engagement. It's having a voice. I think that's the biggest thing. We have 28 employees. Giving each person that voice in their story to be heard, I think is so important. We are a very collaborative company. We have our leadership team, and then but our staff, like, we're constantly like asking, be involved, like questions to them, like thinking outside the box, like how would they like to see, changes, or like be collaborative. Everyone's an open door, and to be able to say, this means so much to me. Can we get this on one of our charity give back programs, or can we go volunteer here? It's not a, it's a we environment 100%. And, being there for as long as I have, like, honestly, I'm honored to go to work every day because of that culture we have that I think you don't see a lot out and about. But I love what we're doing.
How do you, with 28 employees, how do you decide who gets to choose who's being donated to it? Is it on a quarterly basis, or what did you?
Yep. It's so through the tasting room, it's on a quarterly basis. So we have a long list, and if you've been on it in the last few years, you're going to get bumped down.
Okay.
So it's rotating.
Okay.
Yep. So that's kind of, and then, with that, so actually one thing I didn't say, one of our wines always, our sparkling wine, always is giving back to an element. Okay. So technically we're giving through the tasting room through 5 different organizations every year, and then wholesale has it.
So people can decide to, like, if they want to buy a specific wine, then that will specifically go towards whatever. Okay.
Yep.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
And is that one rotating too, or is that one specific for?
That rotates.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. So there's 4 rotating, and the wines rotate. And then we have one that we have been, for the last few years, it's going to 1% for the planet. Okay. So 1% for the planet has tons of organizations within that, too.
Okay. Is 1% for the planet? That's like is that a national?
Yeah.
I know I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Is that like, so like 1% of your like retail sales goes towards that, and then they go through whatever they go through?
And you can go in and choose, like, I want to support, for instance, the Woodland Park Zoo is one of them that's located in 1% for the planet. But you can go in and look through states and all that too.
So you have 5 different arms of giving, basically, you said, or how do you, I don't know if I'm using the right word.
Yeah, no, that's true. So there's I guess we'll divide them up into companies. So through Dobbes Family Estate, through the Tasting Room in Dundee, we have 5. And then through Wine by Joe, which is more of the national scope, we do like 1 to 2 a year. Okay. And then partnering. So we do like the big partnerships. So right now is the Oregon Zoo, and then the Key West National Marine Sanctuary. And then we'll have some offshoots with our distributors. Okay. Through that too. So, okay. Yeah.
So through the tasting room, there's 5 organizations at a time, or is that? Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, no, 5 throughout the year. So there's always 2 at a time.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So one's through the sparkling wine, and then one is through whichever employee's turn it is to choose. Yep. Okay. Yep. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. And so then it rotates. So wait, wouldn't that be, I'm getting confused. Is that how does that work? So it's not 8 per year.
So it's quarterly. So it's quarterly. We choose a new wine each quarter and a new foundation each quarter to support. Okay. Yeah. So you do 8, like throughout the year, you're supporting 8 different organizations. One. So it's, sorry, I'm confused. I'm confusing you. So no. So it's just once a quarter. Well, 10% of proceeds of, say it's the Amelia Rose Pinot Noir, 10% of that wine will go to that charity. Okay. Yeah. And then sorry, I'm confusing. To another organization. Yes. Okay. Yep. Okay. We'll leave it at that. Just lots of giving back.
My degree was in mechanical engineering, and so like spreadsheets and like details, like so sometimes I get stuck on stupid details. So
I love my spreadsheets. Everyone laughs at me. They're like feet long.
You just got to make your font smaller, right?
Exactly.
Pick up the microscope. Okay. I had my little list of questions here. For you personally, you mentioned that you had family members who had tumors, right? And that was what kind of got you into it. But now you're doing giving much broader than giving back to like cancer societies or whatever that disease was. What does giving mean to you, like on a personal level, as far as like why that's important, and then also as a company, like what does it mean to you as a company?
I think giving for me is, I love educating more people on things because I just don't I think people, like I said earlier, it's just like we just don't have the time to give back. I just, having that bigger message to me, it's just, it makes my life fulfilling, rewarding, and to like see, talking to somebody and they're like, oh my God, I didn't think about that. Or, maybe it gives them just a different outlook. Like, and I got to forever reason how my path got me to where I am today. And, to give joy or knowledge to someone like is enriching to me too. And, to my, like I said, my family members that have had issues. We all have stuff in our families, and that speaks differently to all of us. So I think, that's just been more than I knew. Giving was fulfilling, but then in how it's grown in my career, in the last, 3 to 5 years, it just, it's gone to just a different, deeper level. I get to actually, so once you're with our company for 15 years, you get to make your own barrel of wine. And so before I came here, I was talking to our marketing director about my wine because it's going to get bottled this year. And so we're just talking about what I want to do. And like I said, I have so many furry children that we're going to put paw prints on my label, and then we're going to give proceeds back to the Oregon Humane Society. So that's going to be my little thing. So even it was cute. Our Julie was like, oh, we could do this, and we could like do depictions of your dogs and cats on the front label. And I was like, yes, I love it. Like, but it's just like seeing the joy too of just like her thought going in mine, and how we can, and it's just another level of giving back. And it's just, I'm excited for that. And, with that, when I get to have my wine come out and go into the tasting room, and I'll be down there pouring it, and I can talk to our customers and tell them, the story and why I chose this. Just like when our employees pick a wine for quarterly, like it's their personal story. And it's that connection with a customer, with a complete stranger. But it's like, I can go up and be like, let's talk about animals, and who's going to say no to that? Or any type of, thing like that speaks to someone. It's been so rewarding.
Yeah. What do you think you've learned about effective giving? Because I think if you've done giving enough, there's a phrase like donor fatigue, like, or like, I feel like I'm giving and like nothing's happening, versus like giving in a way that's actually effective. And part of it, you mentioned engagement and actually going and seeing it. But, what do you feel like you've learned about effective giving?
I think it has to be in your foundation. I think it has to be, it has to be rooted in whoever is like rooted in the company. Like, does this support the values that we have as a company? I mean, we're getting bombarded all day long with people saying, support me, support me, support me. But I think number one, it comes back to, does this fit our culture and what we are and who we stand for? And then, our employee too. So I think that we're very, specific. We're huge, whether it be, like I said, nature, animals, or, that local piece, of giving back to communities and us going out and cleaning up. But I think you have to be specific. You can't spread yourself too thin because, and like you counted up, like we do donate to a lot throughout the year, and that could get to that point. But for us, it doesn't, because we still go back to our foundation of how it started.
Yeah. One of the other questions we were kind of briefly talking about it is the logistics of doing all of this. So who in your company is responsible for organizing the volunteer days and making sure the money goes to the right places and getting all the correct marketing out and all that? Oh,
we definitely have a team. It's kind of we divide and conquer. So when it comes to our staff doing the actual volunteer days, so Erin, who's our director of production, she kind of usually heads that up, looks at the organizations we're supporting that year, and maybe it's some other ones that have come to fruition or we've supported in the past that we'll go volunteer at. When it comes to the tasting room, it's usually our CEO, Carrie, and then our director of marketing that will work with our tasting room, like our team. They'll pick the wines, pick the 4 staff members for that year, and then talk to them. So we'll get all of who we're going to support for like 2025 was already decided at the end of 2024.
Okay.
Yep.
How do you, so the reason I asked that question too is because, I just think of other organizations who may listen to this, or people who listen to this and say like, wow, that sounds great. But like, if you're a new business, or, you don't have a huge team who can, or even any team who can, I guess my question is, how do you get started? Like there wasn't always 28 employees. What did it look like at the beginning, I guess, like just for inspiration for someone who else might want to do something similar?
Well, and I think so the national piece that's been my baby. So that's me. So it's been me. It's been making phone calls. It's been, being curious and asking questions. I think the best thing is like, you never know who you're going to meet and what path is going to lead you to somebody else that might know somebody else. I think always, people can always say no but I think being curious to that next step, I think that's been, for me, just kind of starting off, like, have you done a partnership before? If you have, what does that mean to you? Like some of them haven't gone through, and that's completely okay. But I think I've had a lot of conversations and, not vetting, but again, does it work with our company's organization, on more of that national scope? So I think it's just like, asking the questions, taking the time. It's not, like I said, it's not not quick.
Yeah.
It does take to really find the right, partner and the right message that they have and you have, and to get that out cohesively, it does take about a year. But I think that's the biggest piece, is that messaging, and, and it's like their foundation to our foundation, and does that match up, and can we mutually go out there and educate the community on, conservation message, or, whatever, it happens to be.
Yeah. One thing I've thought about is I see there are companies, actually even, the brokers that we're a part of, Premier Property Group, they have every quarter what they call the circle of giving. So any agent can decide to give back a certain amount. And it rotates quarterly to a new organization. And I've wondered about, there's this book that I read called When Helping Hurts. So basically how to give effectively, and how to don't get into a situation where it's where don't feed the pigeons, because then they become reliant on it. And then when the funding source is gone, they're like, oh my gosh. And then they don't know how to survive on their own. So how do you balance that, or how do you view that versus when you, give, especially if it is a very significant amount, you give and then, stop, how do you do that in a way, or approach that in a way that it's an overall benefit and not the organization becoming reliant on it, and then all of a sudden that funding source is gone? Does that make sense? I've thought about that. Is it better to, and this is not in any way a criticism, I'm just kind of exploring on my own too. Is it better to give to one organization consistently and you have a much, you're not able to impact as many things, but it's much narrower and long term versus like what you guys do is like you're supporting a lot of organizations for a short time. Does that make sense? I mean, obviously that's a very deliberate decision too.
Yeah. I think for us it's worked with that because each stint is, on average about 4 months long.
Okay.
So I think that's a good chunk of time to really, educate somebody on the message of that organization. Some of our, more on the national scope, that those could, range from 4 months to a year. And then, from that, it's how do you take that, like you said, like you don't want to keep repeating the same thing, but how can you take it to a different level? So for instance, with the Oregon Zoo, we came out with an exclusive label for Safeway Albertsons. So it's an collector's edition, and one label is a tiger, rhino, and the otter. And those were all the art was done by Megan with the Oregon Zoo. She's a zookeeper for the tigers and otters. So it's like, that's an amazing connection too. Yeah. She did all of those. But so it takes it to what the zoo is doing for each one of those animals. So we took an initial partnership where, we were talking about Jolene, because Joe and Jolene, she had her first birthday a year ago, the orangutan. We talked about the polar bears too. So with them, it's been these different chunks of, so same organization, but different messaging on their conservation within the zoo, and how that's kind of grown over the last few years. So I think with that, with all organizations, I think there's different, avenues to take, like, how it can morph as time goes on. But through the tasting room, with those, like with it being an employee, like we'll just stick to that 4 months. But on the national, that's what's been fun on the national piece, to kind of see how it can evolve as it goes.
In the tasting room, for example, like what's the organization you guys are supporting right now?
We just, it's PAIR. Okay. So that's the one in Portland with the homeless community. And you mentioned
with education. So like when people come in and they're like, are they also learning about that then? Okay.
Yep. So our staff, our staff will talk about the organization. So that's why we really like having the organization come in and speak to our staff, so they can say, they were just here and this is what they do. And, they support, 15 to 25-year-old kids. And, they speak to that. And so they educate every consumer that comes through our door on that.
So I guess that goes back into to what you were saying before of how the impact is much broader. It's not just, we're supporting these people financially, but you have those people who come in, and then you may never know who out of those people becomes like, oh my gosh, like this is the organization I'm super passionate about. And they begin contributing. So that makes a lot of sense. And it's actually in a similar way to what this podcast is people listening, and, maybe someone hears something about a nonprofit and that really resonates with them. And, it's only one episode, but it could, for someone, that could be, life-changing for them. And it could be life-changing for the nonprofit if they get a donor who's like, I want my estate to go to these people that I didn't know about, but now that I know what they're doing. And so I think what you were talking about with it being like an ethos within your company, of it's not just we write a check, but your whole staff, and you're actually educating people and talking to people about it. It really widens the impact you're able to have.
Yeah, it's a bigger message. Like, like I said, we're not talking about wine. We're talking about, we have this amazing opportunity to talk about what these amazing organizations are doing outside of our company. And we can just be a conduit, with this bottle of wine to talk about it. And I think the special thing with wine, like that's what wine is. It's supposed to be, this gathering point and sharing stories and learning. And so we get to bring kind of all of that together. And I think that's what's made for us so successful in all of our partnerships.
How do you hope that Dobbes and Wine by Joe inspires other organizations, like whether that's here locally, other wineries, just other businesses in general?
I think, looking to the community and what speaks to them. I mean, and I think, with organizations and saying, I still remember when we came out and be like, hey, everyone's like, we're all going volunteering and it's mandatory. And people are like, we're doing what? Like, you're all going, we're going down downtown Portland, which we've done and picked up on the streets there. And, but again, it's that buy-in, like it's, and the repetition with like, this is something that is important to us and we're building it in to our company. But I think we've taken a lot of time over the last few years and looking at, our foundation, our values, and really honing in on what speaks to us. So I think by always going back and that being our driving force, I think with any company that wants to look into giving back of like what speaks to the company as a whole, not just like the head of the company, because it's everyone. Yeah. And I think having those employees, everyone having that buy-in, everyone being on the same level. And I think that's what's important, like with our company too. It's like we have this collective support together rather than, somebody at the top is making a decision. That's not how it goes. And that's what's worked for us.
Yeah. What advice would you give to an organization or a company, and maybe it's a company that's fairly new and they're thinking, well, gosh, I'd love to give, but I can't afford to, or, I'm afraid that if I do that, I'm not going to have enough money for my business. And on a personal note, when I first started in real estate, I kind of naively, I guess I don't know if it was, I think my heart was in the right spot, but I was also just naive. I gave away like $500 or 10%, like usually ended up being around the same, to a nonprofit. And, eventually my wife was like, hey, like I can't buy shoes for our son because like you're giving all this money away. And I was like, oh, I need to kind of get my priorities straightened out. And, we still give it in other ways too, and not like 100%, like, as much as we work. So we were giving away like 20% of our income, which is just not smart when you're in a new business. So like, what advice would you give to someone who feels like, I don't feel like I can do anything meaningful because I need this money for like my family or my business or, to be able to make payroll or whatever the situation they're in?
I think even just the time, and it's not just like, maybe it's a morning, go to YCAP and pack some lunches, or, go to reach out to the different organizations. Like on MLK Day, that is a huge volunteering day. When we were in Sherwood with Friends of Trees, there were hundreds of people that showed up to plant in the park. But I think we were there from 9 to like 11:30. So it's not, I think sometimes people think that it's like a whole huge chunk a day, but it could just be a couple hours and just, a couple hours out of the day and go giving back. And it's giving back our time is money too, but not necessarily actual funds, but just giving back, volunteering that way. And I'm just amazed that there's so many, here locally too, that people are like, yes, please, you want to help?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Michelle, for sharing all of that. I think that's, it gives me hope knowing that there's companies like you who are passionate about making a difference. And last question I ask everyone is, what gives you hope about the future of Newberg and our surrounding Chehalem Valley complex?
Oh my goodness. I've seen it change so much throughout the years. Goodness. The thing that I think is neat about our community is, everyone comes back home. Like, even I left and went to college and came back. I live on the property that my parents bought, over 30 years ago. And so my husband and I are there. My parent called our compound because my parents are still on property, but they have another house on property. But, it's just, Carrie, our CEO, she's born and raised in Dundee, and I'm, like I said, in Newberg. But everyone that's here loves where we live. Like with the chamber and the communities and the business partners that want to help each other out. even though we're growing like none other, and especially from COVID, like there's so many people coming out from Portland in droves and moving up here from California too. But we're still at the heart, I feel, as having our small community. And I think I love even the walking district in downtown Newberg. I love the all the different ones at the, oh my God, I'm blanking by the library.
Oh, like,
just the different, like there was a truffle festival last weekend, but that coming together of community, like I love I've seen that my entire life, and that's still going on. But even to, like you said, with Rotary and all of those organizations, or the Old Fashioned Festival, like we still have those small town elements, and we're growing quickly, but I would never leave. We're stuck here in Newberg.
Yeah, we tried leaving once after my wife and I graduated from George Fox, and we were out of town for a couple of years, and just never felt at home until we came back here. Mm-hmm. It's funny how it does have a gravitational pull.
It does. It totally does. I definitely have to say, growing up, like you'd go to Fred Meyer's and be like a high school reunion. It's not as much like that anymore. But
like it to me.
I'm like, don't see as many people.
Grocery outlet is like, oh, hey, you're here. Oh, it's like a party place.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you.
Look forward to sharing this with our audience, and just appreciate all that you do. And also just have to give a shout out. You brought some lovely wines. We look forward to trying that out as well.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for tuning in to the Giving Town podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend who you think might benefit from hearing it. While more and more people are continuing to hear about this podcast, I still need your help to spread the message about all the people and organizations that make Newberg so great. Well, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode.